Lovely, thank you. So we are really pleased to welcome Bekki Gorgon, who's the engagement officer at St Andrews Botanic Garden. And she's going to share how the Planting for Your Peace project has created volunteering pathways for people who access mental health support. Becky's going to introduce this project and tell us how it's evolved over the past 2 years and share some of the lessons which have been learned from this project, as well as the impact it's had on Botanic Gardens volunteering programme and the garden community more widely. So Becky, can I hand over to you?
Yes, of course. Thank you, Gabrielle. I'm just going to screen share, fingers crossed this works straight away. And unfortunately, I can't see you at the minute. So if somebody could give me a shout if they can see the slides properly, that would be great.
Yep, all good. Me?
Perfect. Thank you so much. So this event came about based on a previous volunteer organisers network event where we were talking about supported volunteer routes and different programs within our organisations. Sorry, I think I've had a wee seeing it again. Tiny wee tech glitch there.
That's grand, perfect.
Perfect. So we were talking about supported volunteer programs in our organisations and how those have come about. So I wanted to share our supported volunteer program, Planting for Your Peace, and touch on how this has changed our attitude towards volunteering and our core volunteer program and some of the benefits we've had of running this program. So I'll run through who we are as St Andrews Botanic Garden Trust and what our existing volunteer programme was prior to Planting for Your Peace, and how the conditions came about for Planting for Your Peace and the potential we had in the garden and the resources that were available for that. A little bit of an overview of what the programme's achieved and how the programme runs, and then a little bit of discussion about our lessons learned and our next steps for the programme. So as you can probably imagine, St Andrews Botanic Garden Trust operates St Andrews Botanic Garden in Fife. We are based about 10 minutes out of the town centre of St Andrews. Up until 10 years ago, it was operated by firstly the university and then by Fife Council. Then 10 years ago was taken over by a charitable trust. And the garden was originally designed to be a very traditional university teaching garden, with a focus on individual plants from around the British Empire, like many other gardens at the time, and also plants arranged by their botanical classification in greenhouses or grown using peat. But since about 5 years ago, we've really shifted our focus as an organisation. We now have a non-traditional approach to being a botanic garden, and we focus much more on communities of plants and how they interact, and especially focusing on Fife and focusing on threatened plant communities in Fife and how the plants in those systems interact, and comparable systems around the world, and comparable systems now, and also those that will be comparable as the climate changes in 2070 or 2090. We've also got a wide-ranging public engagement programme with a focus on widening access and engaging with people who typically don't consider botanic gardens for them, or maybe don't realise that we have a botanic garden here in Fife. And one of our key aims over the next few years, one of our key outcomes, is to build resilient communities of plants and people, and also to introduce people in our community to a window to a wilder world. So our existing volunteer programme was put in place just coming out of lockdown, and that was a model that involved weekly volunteer sessions led by horticultural specialists, people from our garden team or from our nursery team. And they were primarily volunteers from one demographic. We mostly had volunteers who were retired and who already had an interest in gardening and horticulture, who were already our typical audience, who had an interest in historic gardens and botanic gardens, plus a handful of students from the University of St Andrews. And the majority of these volunteers, when they joined the programme, quoted their motivation for volunteering as being about learning new skills or gaining work experience, also about feeling productive now they were retired, and seeing the change that volunteers make in the garden. And our staff who were leading these sessions were mostly focused on teaching and training and showing volunteers how to efficiently grow plants for our plant sales or maintaining the garden as a nice place for visitors to be. However, after joining the programme, many of our volunteers, after a few weeks or a few months in, were more likely to comment on the social connections that they found from volunteering as their main motive for coming back and for engaging with the programme. There's an example I always use, which is from our Thursday morning group. When their session leader, Peter, went home to Ireland to get married, and they came in on the day of his wedding in their Sunday best and their wedding clothes, and all had tea and coffee together to say congratulations to Peter and Neve. So we knew from this really strong connection that the volunteers had with each other and also with their session leaders that there was the potential for the connections in the garden to benefit more people in the community. So we realised based on this experience and also from research from in the literature that there were huge benefits to being outdoors, volunteering outdoors for people with mental health, for building social relationships, and also for reducing social isolation. We knew that there was potential there for a new programme. We also knew that we had the right combination of expertise for this programme. We had both our engagement staff who had worked for many years on widening access to the garden, on working with people from different backgrounds, and then the expert horticultural knowledge to complement that from our garden team. We were also in a fortunate position to have underutilised space in the garden that this project could take place. And you can see in the image just in the top right there, there's an established orchard, not sure how visible it is, the back of this space that was open to be used by a community, and also these slightly raised beds in the front. But as you can see from the photo, they were quite underloved and they were in need of some more attention. And this space was up for grabs for a community group. The final potential for this programme that I think is really important to mention was that we had financial support from the Fife Community's Mental Health and Wellbeing Fund. And this was administered through Fife Voluntary Action and coming out of COVID and into the cost of living crisis to improve community wellbeing. It's absolutely feasible to run a supported volunteer group without it, but I think it's really important to mention that we did have the financial support there. And we used that to remove as many barriers to volunteering as we could, including travel funding, providing snacks and drinks during the sessions. And it also covered some of the awareness raising for this project. So the print costs and design costs of posters to go in our community hospital and around the town, and also a small contribution to some of our staff costs as well. So this new programme was to become Planting for Your Peace. Our team love a good pun, so this was peace as in peace of mind and mental well-being, also peace as in your sandwich or your lunch. And this formed fortnightly gardening sessions and nature activities every other Wednesday afternoon, which were centred around growing food from plant to plate. So we worked with volunteers to redevelop this community garden, the whole process from choosing what seeds they'd like to plant, growing them up indoors, adding them into the plots, maintenance, harvest, and then producing food with these vegetables on site as well. The group was designed for people who were accessing mental health support or who were socially isolated. And they came to us from a mixture of referral routes. So we had some referrals from other third sector organisations, from charity partners in St Andrews and in the wider Fife area, as well as some self-referrals from people who had seen posters or social media posts or mail-outs from the garden. It was really important to us from the start that this group had a consistent staff member as part of the group. And during the first year of Planting for Your Peace, we had all the sessions run by one member of our engagement team who had lots of experience supporting people from a variety of backgrounds in the garden. We also knew, based on our experience with the Thursday nursery volunteer group, that a long coffee break and an opportunity for a chat is going to be really important to the group. for creating those social connections and a sort of informal catch-up. The final part of this project that we included were special event days. So they were opportunities for Planting for Your Peace participants to bring their family and friends to the garden for free visits, to help them get to know the garden and to give participants an opportunity to share what they'd been up to with family and friends. And fortunately, we met our expected outcomes for Planting for Your Peace. We did experience volunteers that were taking part in Planting for Your Peace having stronger social connections, and they commented on being more confident after taking part in the sessions, and also on the benefits from being outdoors and taking part in physical exercise and gardening outside. They also spoke about the satisfaction from growing and eating their own foods. And we were lucky to receive lots of lovely feedback about this from the volunteers, which you can see here. I've also included these collages throughout, which will spot throughout the rest of this presentation. And lots of our volunteers weren't comfortable being photographed as part of the project, but we wanted to make sure they were included in our evaluation and in our awareness raising about this project. So we asked them to create these collages about what the garden and what Planting for Your Peace means to them. And I've shared these throughout in the next few slides. But what was almost more important for Planting for Your Peace were our unexpected outcomes. The things we hadn't expected before the project, but turned out to be a really key part of our volunteer project going forward. So the diversity of people attending, the diversity of people registering, almost took us by surprise a little bit. We knew that we were marketing the group to people who were accessing mental health services, and we were expecting people who were accessing NHS mental health services in some way. But actually, the participants that came to the group were people who were in need of a community in lots of different ways. So we had people with disabilities who were out of work, people who were being supported by employability services, people who were unpaid carers or referred by their schools, and also a number of people who attended through befriending services. So as befrienders and befriendees had a session that they could attend together. We were also surprised by where Planting for Your Peace fell in our programme. We'd initially expected it to be a purely widening access community project. This was how we staffed it, factored it into our programme. But actually, lots of the Planting for Your Peace volunteers were interested in spending more time in the garden, getting involved further. And many of them chose to graduate into our core volunteer programme to spend more time in the garden and also be able to continue learning skills with our garden team and meet further people who were part of the core volunteer programme. Something we discovered didn't work hugely well were the special event days I've mentioned previously. Many of the people engaging with Planting for Your Peace were engaging because they were socially isolated, which meant they didn't have family and friends to bring along to weekend events and evening events in the garden. So instead, we knew that many of the Planting for Your Peace participants that had moved into the core volunteer programme wanted to stay in touch, did it be best to run these special event days across our whole garden community, and invited our friends of the garden and our volunteers to do joint special event days. You can see in the middle here, we did a joint Christmas celebration, and we have another event coming up this weekend actually, where across our whole community, we've been growing rye and wheat to make flour, and the group will be sieving and processing that this weekend. And overall, we found that through Planting for Your Peace, we created a really strong community who had a really strong connection to the garden. They were very willing to offer their ideas. They had a lot of enthusiasm for the garden and were happy to share their perspective on what we were doing as an organisation as well. As I mentioned at the start about our existing volunteer programme, and many of our volunteers were the audience you would expect to visit Botanic Garden. that already engaged with other botanic gardens, other historic gardens. And it's been amazing to have the different perspectives of Planting for Your Peace members. Everything from what films to show in our solar cinema and what types of events to do, what shop stop to have. And they've been really happy to come forward with their ideas and share what suits them as people who use the garden. So I wanted to take the time now to share a little bit of case study of how Planting for Your Peace has supported one specific family, but also improved our volunteer programme in general. So we were approached near the start of the project by this family and their support worker. I've spoken to them about including their experiences, and they're both very happy for me to share this because they're proud to be part of the project. But just to be on the safe side, I've anonymised them as well. So Andrew and Lily and their support worker supported us reached out to us just in the run up to Planting for Your Peace. They were both struggling with their mental health. Lily was undergoing a autism diagnosis pathway, and she had anxiety and was really struggling to stay in school. So Andrew made the decision to support her education at home. However, they were becoming quite isolated. They lived in quite a rural part of North Fife. And along with Andrew's existing mental health and chronic health conditions, and having Lily at home, it was becoming quite overwhelming and quite isolating. Something they did really enjoy doing together was being in the garden and gardening. So they reached out to us to see if there was any way that we could support Lily's learning at the garden. And unfortunately, not that long ago, it would have been a blanket no reply, unfortunately. We had a blanket policy of not accepting any under 18s as volunteers. However, we were really keen to be able to engage with Lily. I had volunteered here as a teenager, and I knew myself personally how much they could get out from volunteering at the gardens. And we decided that we would try supporting them through Planting for Your Peace. We were very aware that Lily was the first under 18 that we'd supported in quite some time, and that they would very much be guinea pigs throughout this project. They both responded really well to being part of the group, and we've had some lovely feedback from Andrew about their experience, and they've been getting further and further involved in our programme since. Both our Thursday morning group in the nursery and also some specific volunteer opportunities for Lily. She's really keen on taxidermy and on British mammals. So she's worked with me and other members of our education and engagement team, create resources for schools based around this, using owl pellets to do some small mammal identification. And we've taken that out to schools and also out to places like the Fife show, so other people in Fife can enjoy these resources that she's developed. Lily and Andrew also led to us introducing the Saltire Awards for young people. So I'm sure many of you will be familiar with these. These are awards for volunteers under 25, and it just records how many hours they've been volunteering with your organisation. And we wanted to put this in place for Lily so she had a record of her contribution to use in college applications or job applications. And we put this in place for all our volunteers under 25. And it was a really big step for Lily to have these certificates printed off and presented during sessions, but also really proud for her and Andrew. And as well as introducing Saltire Awards, we've changed our policy on young people to allow all 16-year-olds to volunteer as part of our core programme. There had never been a reason for this other than that it was the existing policy, and it only took a very short phone call to our insurers to open up a lot more opportunities for 16 and 17-year-olds locally, either for work experience or as part of their college placements or for their Gold Duke of Edinburgh as well. So Planting for Your Peace is continuing this year. This is the second year that we've run it. We normally run from March till December, so we're about halfway through this year's project. And this year we've opened the project up to everyone who thinks that they benefit from volunteering and working outdoors, but need a supported route. We've continued to focus on not having a complicated application process or any sort of interview process. And people can just get in touch with us and let us know they think they would benefit and come along to the group. We're also focusing this year on a smaller group size. Instead of stressing about having the full 15 to 20 person group, we've been focusing on providing good support to those that come along over recruitment and focusing on having a really good experience for those 6 to 8 participants. We've also continued to join up our core volunteer programme with Planting for Your Peace, having overlapping projects like growing the rye and the wheat. We'll have flax as well this year, and joint flax growing for producing linen, and tying that in with other community projects locally. We've also been focusing more on attendee-led planning and activities, a lot more skill sharing. We're very fortunate to have a group member who's a retired chef and has wonderful experience with French and Italian cooking. And so she's been leading some sessions, making the most of the produce that we've been growing during the project. And the image that you can see on the slide here was an activity that Andrew and Lily led. And they're making dandelion honey here using oranges and dandelions, the vegan alternative to honey. And that can be used on ice creams and desserts and things. And we invested in this fire pit as part of Planting for Your Peace, which has made a huge difference to the amount of cooking and using the vegetables that have been grown that we can do. We've also been capturing more feedback from our participants instead of the usual last-minute panic towards the end of the project, and trying to capture feedback in more creative ways, like the collages you saw earlier. So our slightly longer term plans for our volunteer programme is to introduce more staff members into Planting for Your Peace. It was a massive benefit to participants having one consistent group leader last year, but it can be complicated with staff holidays and staff absences. So our nature engagement team, our casual education staff are slowly being introduced to the Planting for Your Peace group to help build more resilience and make sure they're familiar with more members of our team. We're also going to be providing more support for our whole organisation, not just our engagement staff, our front of house team who check volunteers and Planting for Your Peace participants in, and our garden team who work with our core volunteer programme. And we'll be doing some internal training sessions, but also external training on working with people with autism and ADHD, so as they can be confident in working with Planting for Your Peace members who have graduated into the core volunteer programme and need that support. Another thing we have planned this year that's just starting to fall into place is increasing my capacity as volunteer coordinator. It'd be lovely to be volunteer coordinator full-time. It's only a small part of my role. But we've been freeing up some of my other responsibilities to allow me to put more time into understanding individual volunteers' needs, and also creating new policies and new support processes for session leaders and for volunteers as well. And overall, it sounds like a very dramatic thing to say. There has been a genuine change in attitude from having the Planting for Your Peace programme running in the garden. We have a lot more flexibility when it comes to recruiting and supporting volunteers. And we've been looking much more at the longer term picture of what volunteers can offer us. And we've generally been more joined up as a team in looking at each volunteer's needs and how they can support the garden. So I'm going to finish up here to give plenty of time for questions. As this is recorded, I know there might be some people who are saving up their questions for later. Please feel free to drop me an email if you have a burning question that comes up later or that you don't feel comfortable sharing to the group. I'll leave my email up here, and hopefully that provides a little bit of information about our process and our experiences that can support either a supported volunteer programme or just increasing the accessibility to your core volunteer programmes.
Thank you, Bekki. I can't find the clap, clap, clap emoji. That was a really great introduction. And thank you. I think we'll stop the recording now. Have you done that already, Kirsty?